Hello and welcome to Brilliant But Lazy. I'm Alan.
I'm Josh, and we have been lazy for the past couple months. We have seen so many things, but have not made the time to come here and talk about it. But today is a day of reckoning, and we're going to go through all of them.
Yes, and even though we've been lazy the last few months, we have still been brilliant. And that's why we are
Yes.
here. We were saving the brilliantness of this podcast for tonight as part of the Victims and Villains live stream event. So thank you for tuning in. If you have not already, please donate to Victims and Villains. Josh and I are both very involved in the organization, and all of the fun events that they have planned throughout the next year are going to be very exciting. And every cent that you can donate helps.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. On that note, we do have a lot to talk about and not much time. So, we're going to get right into this and talk about a whole bunch of stuff. But we are the pop culture podcast here on the Victims and Villains podcast network. So, we're going to start off with we were originally the Marvel guys.
Right.
So then that kind of shifted into more the Disney Plus guys with a lot of Star Wars stuff that we were covering. So we're going to do a little bit of that at the beginning of the show here. Starting with the latest Marvel Disney Plus show, Secret Invasion, starring Nick Fury. And that's about it. So this
I thought you were going to say the latest Marvel disaster or disappointment, but you said Disney Plus show. So, I mean, but I think, it could be either of those things.
I will go on record as saying that this is the reason I think Disney is getting away from doing Disney Plus shows, or Marvel is getting away from Disney Plus shows. I don't understand the purpose of this. It was very disappointing, and there is such a stacked cast for this. Like, you have Ben Mendelsohn and Samuel L. Jackson, Olivia Colman, Emilia Clarke. Like, it was such a, and there were moments in this that I liked, but overall, I'm just like, what was the point of this?
Yeah, it was. It really made me kind of miss the Marvel Disney Plus shows in the beginning. Like, I remember when we launched with WandaVision and Winter Soldier and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and WandaVision was just so experimental and you really weren't sure where they were going with it, but it was intriguing. And then Winter Soldier and Falcon was this very fun kind of espionage, kind of small story that this is what Kevin Feige had teased, that we were going to have smaller stories that would give some characters more screen time than they get in the movies, but they'd still be intriguing and fun to watch. And I really enjoyed both of those. And so now you get the return of Nick Fury, and he's got his own show, and it's Samuel L. Mother effing Jackson. And I was just waiting for this. The trailer sold it as kind of a spy intrigue show, and I knew it was gonna be nothing like the Secret Invasion comic. But the show was just so boring and so bland and so just that, like, it just did the name disservice. Like, it was almost irritating how far off the mark it was.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of something that I enjoyed from this show.
Thank God.
I liked Emilia Clarke up until the final episode. Like, I enjoyed her character arc. That final battle, though, just I was so confused. So, and the internet does this thing where they like to nitpick a lot of things. And the one thing that I will give it, like, so she gets all these powers from the DNA of the Avengers at the final battle in Endgame. And at one point, she just flexes her arm, and it's Drax's arm, but it still has all of his tattoos, which makes no sense. Because
You didn't know that tattoos are part of the race? Like, they all have those tattoos?
Well, and also, she's going to turn into Drax. She should just not. You shouldn't be able to see her arm.
Yeah. That was a good joke.
Yes, I try.
Yeah. I thought that there were certain deaths in the show that were just like, oh, we're tired of paying Kobe Smulders, so she goes out. And, Ben Mendelsohn, we're tired of him bringing some level of gravitas to the MCU, so he's out. And, just, I mean, it just, I guess it was going to go down either one of two ways. Either be so bland that you go to read the comics, or be so cameo-driven that everybody just calls it, oh, this is just, 5 seconds of whatever, and just have different cameos of superheroes, but they're not really superheroes, they're Skrulls. And it wasn't that, but I think that might have been more intriguing than what we got, honestly. And that boss fight at the end was just so, I could care less.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could think of at the end was, is she gonna be, in the movies going forward? Because she has every power set now. She's bigger than Captain Marvel now. She has literally every single power. So is she gonna be the new Captain Marvel when they get in a bad thing, all the bad guys look to their left and she's coming in with every power set known to the MCU? Or is this just never going to be spoken of again?
I've got her superhero name ready for her, Khaleesi. I did enjoy Olivia Colman. Every time she was on screen, I enjoyed her character.
It's hard not to.
She was definitely the highlight of this show.
I'll tell you one person who was just boring as hell, the bad guy. I really did not care. I just did not. I didn't think he was menacing. I didn't think he was intimidating. He was just boring as hell. I mean, really boring.
It would have been a better dynamic for him to be so against Fury if they had gone the way I thought they were going, where they reveal that he was the adopted son of Nick Fury. Because we find out Nick Fury had a wife this whole time. And it would have made sense for them to have an adopted son as well. And then have him rebel for being angry at his dad. It would have added a little bit more of a personal connection other than just you lied to my people and we've slowly been taking over the earth.
Yeah, I think he has maybe half a line as a background Ken in the Barbie movie, and he was better in that than he was in Secret Invasion. That's all I have to say. I am looking forward to his Bob Marley film, because that does look like he hit the mark on the casting there, but I just couldn't care about Secret Invasion.
I think he's he's probably a great actor. It's just the character in this just didn't do it for me.
Yep.
But I think the one thing that I can say about this that you can't really say for any other Marvel shows is you don't need to watch this to understand what's going on in the movies. But if you haven't seen Ms. Marvel, you're going to be confused when the Marvels comes out in November. So
yeah, we'll see. We'll see if this has any impact in the movies. I feel like we'll never hear about this again, but who knows? We'll see.
I mean, I feel like this may be setting up the new Captain America story where with the new president-elect, which I think is going to be General Ross. So
we'll see.
We'll see what happens there.
But we're on a timer, and I don't want to give this any more time. Honestly.
No, that's it for our thoughts on Secret Invasion. I'm going to call it. We like to rank things here, brilliant or lazy. So I am going to call Secret Invasion lazy.
Yeah, lazy AF.
Yes. All right. So moving on, we got one more big thing to talk about. We spent 8 minutes on Secret Invasion, so let's do the same for the latest Disney Plus show, Ahsoka. And I want to start off by talking about the first 4 episodes first, because I have some issues with this show. What did you think of the first?
Can I give my without saying anything about the content?
Sure.
The first 3 episodes, because at this point we've only seen 5, right?
Yes.
The first 3 episodes of Ahsoka, The 4th episode of Ahsoka, and the 5th episode of Ahsoka, that's my review, and that's all I have to say. Okay.
Yes.
But I thought it was an abysmal, not an abysmal. I just thought it was kind of just like, I just didn't think there was any like real substance to the first 3 episodes. It was a lot of stoicness, a lot of, if you know Rebels, you know these characters, and if you don't, well, SOL, I guess. I watched Rebels, so I liked seeing the interpretations, but even still, I just didn't think they were very riveting episodes, the first 3.
Yeah. It was a lot of prologue for an epilogue for Rebels in those first few episodes. And what, like, if you haven't watched Rebels, like, you are going to be confused by this show. But I think
there's no recap. There's no attempt.
There's a playlist on Disney Plus of all the Clone Wars and Rebels episodes
okay.
that you should watch with Ahsoka. But I don't even know if they include the finale of Rebels, which is mainly what this is dealing with. My issue with the first few episodes, and I had to I spent a lot of time thinking about why do I feel this way, is Rosario Dawson's performance as Ahsoka didn't match what I'm used to for Ahsoka. And I was like, why is that? Why is she so stoic and quiet when Ahsoka's a little bit more energetic and sassy? And I realized, like, we haven't really seen much of Ahsoka post her encounter with Vader and what that does to a person, like having your friend facing the truth of what happened to your friend and your mentor. And I was like, okay, maybe that's why she's portraying the character this way, because it has to be a choice. Like there has to be a reason for it. And that's, there's a chunk of time that we don't get to see with this character and her apprentice, Sabine Wren. Because that was something they never covered in Rebels. I'm guessing that's something that happened during the original trilogy timeline. Like that's where they were off doing, is she was training Sabine and it didn't take. But then episode 4 ends. And do we want to
before you get into what happens at the end of episode 4? The bulk of episode 4 had some more action in it, had some lightsaber. This is one thing that Disney Plus promised, is if you thought Andor, and which I loved Andor, but if you thought previous, Andor and Boba Fett and Mandalorian was missing some lightsabers or not enough lightsabers, we were going to give you lightsabers in Ahsoka. So you had several different lightsaber battles in episode 4. And while I appreciated that, I kind of thought that first 4 episodes, the choreography of the lightsaber fights was lacking. Like I do remember when we first see Ahsoka in The Mandalorian, she's like speed running in like the forest and everything, and I just feel like her movements were more fluid, and she wasn't like, she's been playing her stoic, but at least in that episode of The Mandalorian, she was more fluid and more on her feet and everything. In her fights, I thought she was really wooden in the choreography before episode 5, and even still in episode 4. And I was waiting for something like, you've grown old, or you're tired, and we didn't really get that, but at least we got something. And I did like the Punisher, what's his name?
Ray Stevenson.
I loved his performance in episode 4. I was wondering when we were going to get some screen time with him, because I'm like, we got a little bit of him in the first episode, and then it's just been him sending his underling out to do his bidding, and I'm like, man, I don't know if this is Ray Stevenson's last performance that we'll ever see, but I want more of it. And so I was happy to get more in episode 4 for sure.
One of the things that a coworker of mine pointed out to me about this show is every episode has been directed by up until episode 5. Every episode was directed by a woman. starring women, written by Dave Filoni, because I think a lot of it is so lore heavy, but having having the first Star Wars show that is focusing on a female character be directed by women for the first few episodes, I think is very significant. And I think this is definitely I rank this pretty high on the Star Wars Disney Plus series so far. Even before this week's episode, I like the look of the show and the feel of it. Even though I have some issues with it, I still am excited for this show. And then when you get to the end of episode 4, you're like, oh, this is where we're going now. To the point where, like, 2 days after the episode airs, Disney released a new poster for it, which I have up on the screen now, that they're just like, hey, Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. There was a lot of rumors that he was in this show, and I was hoping they were true. Also, I've heard some positive and some negative reactions to there's a lot of women in this show, and I'm like, I don't care. There's a lot of women characters. We'll get some more guys later on, especially if this Anakin rumor is true. So we get the Anakin face at the end of episode 4, and I'm like, I mean, it's not as bad as like the CGI Luke Skywalker at the end of Mandalorian season 2, and I'm like, okay, let's see. Like I'll give it a go. And then the first half or the first third of episode 5 is very Anakin heavy, and he just looks great. I mean, I thought what they did with him was just like somebody said, you can't drop the ball on this, okay? People have been begging for Christian Hayden's or is it Christian
Hayden Christensen. Hayden Christensen.
I was like, that doesn't sound right. People have been begging for Hayden Christensen to come back, and we got a little bit of him in Obi-Wan, but not fulfilling enough. And we really just, give him something good to work with and give him a heyday. And here we are seeing him in different eras of the Clone Wars, wearing the exact same outfits, things that he did wear on screen in the prequels, and things that he only wore in the Clone Wars. And we're getting some of these really cool, just kind of like set pieces that you can guess which episode they're from, and the interactions and the young Ahsoka. I thought it was just really, really done well. And of course Dave Filoni did it, and it just felt like finally we have a live action rendition of some good Clone Wars stuff, and it looks great.
And not even just the Clone Wars stuff. The lightsaber choreography between the two of them was phenomenal.
Much better. Much better.
And you have a lot of homages to episode 3 and his battle with Obi-Wan. Like, they do a great job of referencing a bunch of the Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader timeline, because he makes references to Luke, even when she says, I'm not going to fight you. He's like, I've heard that before.
He does the spinny thing from episode 3 with his lightsaber that he loves to do.
He does. And I think after this episode, when she gets that closure with Anakin in the world between worlds, and is brought back to the surface and becomes Ahsoka the White, because she's in gray the whole first chunk of the show, and then she comes back and she's Ahsoka the White. Ahsoka is the Gandalf of Star Wars. I cannot wait for the rest of this show, because I feel like everything's been building to what's coming next. I thought we only had one more episode. We have 3, which I am ecstatic about.
I wish I would have seen this episode in theaters. Some cities got to see it in theaters.
Oh, man.
And every time I see that for a TV show, I'm like, that's a gimmick. Because almost always it is. Whether it's The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or
Picard.
Picard, although I would have loved to have seen the Picard finale in theaters. But this one, it really did feel more cinematic. It really did feel like they put the money in this episode. Everything from the ships to the sets. It just It just felt like, oh, this was the money episode, So, one question to you, knowing that there's 3 episodes left, would you rather this be a season 1 with a ending that, like they get Thrawn and stay tuned for season 2, or would you rather this be a limited series event where the story ends at the end of the 3rd final episode?
I would love to. It depends on how the show ends. I know that there are plans for a Dave Filoni directed movie where he wraps up, connects all of the Mando era shows. So this, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and I think Wrecking Crew. Mm-hmm. I think I can. I'm more hopeful for a season 2 of this than I am of Book of Boba Fett.
I don't think they'll ever touch Book of Boba Fett again. I honestly hope they end it. But they'd have to cover a lot of ground. They can't just bring Thrawn back for 30 seconds. And we know he's back because he's in the trailers. So I just hope it's a solid final 3. This one was a longer episode. This one was 52 minutes with credits, and I felt like it was a solid episode in terms of substance and length. So just don't skimp us out, and I feel like they could make 3 stellar. It's not like Dave Filoni doesn't know how to fill an episode, because his season 7 of Clone Wars ended on a high note with those final 4 episodes. That was amazing. So he knows how to bring it home. So we'll see. Even though I said that the first 3 episodes were they were still levels better than something like Book of Boba Fett and the latest season of The Mandalorian. I feel like this is definitely Dave Filoni's baby. It looks like it. It pays a lot of homage to things that he's done. It solidifies his work in the Star Wars universe. And it's colorful, but it's not speed bikes that go 4 miles an hour colorful and look like they're from Spy Kids. It works.
I don't even think it's that colorful. I think this show has been pretty gray. Like, it does brighten up after she comes back. So I'm really curious to see what the show is like from here on out, because I really didn't think we'd get to this point until the end of the season. So I'm excited to see what's next, because I honestly do not know.
And I'm possibly gonna get a ticket to go see Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Yeah. Why am I blanking on names today? Not because of this, honestly. Although I think she's great as Hera. I loved her in Kate, and that's a Netflix assassin movie, and I think it might be worth going to meet her. I've never done like a greet up thing at a Comic-Con before, but I might do that. So we'll see.
I was tempted to get the autograph for Ewan McGregor, her husband, and just walk up to the table and be like, "Hello there," because I'm sure he's never gotten that at a con before.
Never. Yeah.
Yeah. But I got burned by Hayden Christensen last time, so I'm not doing that again.
Not by him specifically, by the people that ran the lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was not his fault. I do not blame him for that, and that is the reason why New York Comic Con will not get my autograph money again. All right, so that wraps up our current pop culture chat for the 2 big shows that we would usually cover on this show. We will probably do an in-depth Ahsoka review when the show ends in October.
For sure.
Maybe that'll be what we record in person at Comic-Con, because that'll be right after the finale.
Yeah.
For the rest of this, we have a lot to get to in very little time. So
we have 12 titles to talk to.
We have 12, and we have 3 minutes to talk about each. So I'm going to put the first one up on the screen here, and then we're going to start a timer. Some of these we have both seen, some of these I have seen, some of these Josh has seen. I think most of these Josh has seen, and I haven't. So we're each going to give our little bit of feedback for each of them, rank it brilliant or lazy, and then move on when the timer is up. So without further ado, the first item on our list is Barbie. I did not see this. Josh, the timer starts now.
I loved Barbie. Barbie was absolutely fantastic. I've seen it multiple times now. It is great. When I need a pick me up, I sing "I'm Just Ken" in my car on the road to work. It's a great film. It's got a lot more heart than I expected. It fits the tone of the trailers. Never did I think that this was necessarily a kids film. It's a PG-13 film, but it's not like a raunchy PG-13 film or anything like that, but it has adult themes, and the adult themes are not like sexual. It's just like it's like a coming of age story for an adult. And fantastic. I've watched it with my wife. She cried during it. I think it's a very emotional film, and it's doing bonkers in the theaters, and good on it. I think it's fantastic. Can't recommend it more.
Yeah, so we have 2 minutes left on the timer. I have not seen this. I had every intention of we had every intention of doing a Barbenheimer crossover between this show and my other show. You have to watch this podcast, but life had other plans for me that weekend. So I was able to go see Oppenheimer, which we'll get to here shortly. But I've still haven't gotten a chance to go see Barbie. Working with college
Highly
kids,
recommend.
college film students, a lot of them have talked about this. I worked I'm Just Ken into one of the lessons I teach. So I put it in the teleprompter and had them read it just to get the feel for reading a teleprompter. And the performances were fantastic.
Great.
I'm really looking forward to seeing this. I might go check it out when it's released in IMAX, because I am all for the irony of seeing Oppenheimer in a standard theater and then seeing Barbie in IMAX. But I've only heard good things about this. I cannot wait to see it. And I'm excited to see how many people are dressed as Kens for Halloween this year.
Should be a lot. Or for New York Comic Con, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, you could dress up as Batman and be like, I'm Bat Ken. Like it's
That's true.
you can
That's true.
anyone can be Ken. They can be Ken enough. 30 seconds left on the clock. Anything else for Barbie? Or do we want to move on?
I don't think we have time to give each film 3 minutes, so let's just move on to the next
All
one.
right. So do you rank it brilliant or lazy?
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
All right.
Highest
So
of brilliance.
moving on.
Barbie brilliant.
Oppenheimer, which I have seen, so I'll start on this one. Oppenheimer, I got to see. I thought I bought a ticket for IMAX, but I messed up. It's a Chris Nolan film. It follows his format. It's loud. You can understand the dialogue this time. I think the cast is fantastic. The use of practical effects without relying too heavily on digital really stands out in this. There's a few weird choices. Like, I still don't understand that scene with Cillian Murphy and Florence Pugh and why they had to sit that way in those chairs wearing what they were wearing.
Did you know they censored that in other countries?
I did know
They
that.
put a CGI dress on her for some reason. Yeah.
I mean, it might have been less distracting for me if they did that here. Like, I get what he's going for with it, but it's like, is it necessary for the story that we're telling? And I don't think it was. But I think the performance, like, if Robert Downey Jr. is not nominated for an Oscar for this, I'll be surprised. Matt Damon is Matt Damon. I'm surprised he doesn't get rescued in this movie for some reason. What are your thoughts on Oppenheimer?
I did see it in true IMAX, and it was definitely filmed for IMAX. The bombastic visuals, the sound was just crushing sound. You are right. It does follow the Nolan structure in that it's heavily about time. It jumps back and forth between 3 or 4 different timelines, which never got really confusing, but did get exhausting at times. It's cameo overload. It felt like a Scorsese movie at times. It was a cameo overload, and some of them were cool, and some of them were distracting, and some of them were just like, oh, okay, a new scene, new cameo. I do agree that Robert Downey Jr. was a highlight of the film. Murphy. I mean, he's the lead, and he does great in the lead. I think it's a lot of build up and minimal payoff. Honestly, I loved seeing how it got to the test point, but I know it was a choice not to show the actual bombs dropping and whatnot. But I feel like the whole trailers and everything were definitely teasing up to a moment that is the shortest moment of the film, and then you get all this kind of slow down aftermath of the they're not court scenes, but whatever, the investigative scenes. And while I'm
13 seconds.
interested in that, it definitely slowed down. So
I saw somebody talk about Chris Nolan movies are always about a man losing something. Like Batman Begins about a man losing his parents. This one's about a man losing his security clearances. Time's up.
Yeah.
Brilliant or lazy?
Brilliant, but soft brilliant.
Okay.
I think it could have been better.
All right. I will give it a brilliant
Okay.
as well.
It's done
All right.
bonkers for a R-rated, mostly black and white film.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have DC's Blue Beetle.
Whew. Yeah.
I did
Dung
not get a
Beetle-
chance to see this.
Dung Beetle could have been a different title for it. This was disappointing. I think I blame myself for getting so hyped for this, because I really I had a lot more faith in it, and I believe James Gunn, and I should not, I guess. This movie was disappointing. It had the structure to be great. It had a good family unit. It's got the kid from the Cobra Kai. And he's actually good. You know, he's a good actor. I think he's a better actor in Cobra Kai than he is in this show. I feel like Blue Beetle was rushed, and it's a mix of Iron Man, Spider-Man: Homecoming, and so many other better films. Like, there's so many parts of this that just seem like they were literally torn from those other movies. And I'm a big fan of Blue Beetle, especially in an animated form. I think they've done a lot of really cool things on the Titans animated show and whatnot, and in the HBO or the whatever DC Max or whatever a Titans show. I think that show does a better job of showing the inner conflict between the guy and the beetle, and this one they sync up way too quickly, and then all of a sudden it's just harmony. And then also it has for some reason Blue Beetle has a no kill policy, but his family kills so many people on purpose, and it just gets a little ludicrous. And then it's done. And so I walked out disappointed as hell from this movie.
Having not seen it, was it evident that this was originally planned for
it felt like
HBO
it
Max?
was filmed in the CW universe. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I got excited, a year or two ago when they're like, no, we're moving this to theaters because this is actually great. But they tricked me, man. It definitely felt like it was filmed in the CW universe.
Okay.
And that's not a compliment for a movie.
All right. At what point do we stop believing James Gunn hyping up all the projects that DC did before he got involved?
I don't understand why. We've talked about this before. Why is he spending so much time and energy defending the stuff that came before him? It doesn't give him any credibility for the stuff. By the time he actually gets to his own thing, people are going to be like, yeah, but you said these films were great. And why? He didn't have any fingerprints on him. What does he have to? Is it part of his contract to hype these films up?
I saw that the directors of Batgirl were talked about having seen The Flash and being like, yeah, it hurts even more now that they released that.
I'm sure it does.
Everything. All right.
He's going to get fired before we even get to his movies. I'm
possibly. So Blue Beetle, I'm going to say, what do you give it? Brilliant or lazy?
Lazy as F.
Lazy? All right. Moving on. The Last Voyage of the Demeter. I also did not see this, so Josh, take it away.
This was fun. I'm a big fan of Dracula. I've seen pretty much every Dracula project that's come out. Some of them are great, some of them are not so great, some of them are kind of somewhere in the middle. The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a chapter, and a very famous chapter in the original Dracula book, and and it's something that other things have touched on before. If you've seen the recent BBC Dracula show, there's a most of an episode about Dracula's trek over to the UK on the Demeter, and so it's a very well known story to me. And I thought it was interesting that they chose to make a whole movie around it, but it is kind of set up to be a movie. You know, it's Dracula making the trek across the what is it, the Atlantic to get to the to Britain, and he's stuck on the ship, and it's a decision of does he just stay down below in his little casket trunk and never get out, but then does he get hungry because it takes forever to get a boat across there, and does he just pick off everyone in the crew, and does anybody survive by the time they reach the shores of Britain? It's a great chapter, and for the most part, it's a great movie. I mean, I really didn't go into it with very high hopes because I thought the CG and the trailers didn't look that great, but it looked pretty good in the actual movie, and I was impressed.
I'm not familiar with the story of this at all. So where's he traveling from? Is it Transylvania?
This was when he decided to pack up everything from his Transylvania estate and move to the UK. And he got somebody to come, like a real estate agent, to come over and purchase some land for him. And then they had all these people in carts and trunks just bring everything over. And what they didn't know was that in one of the trunks was Dracula. They just thought they were bringing over some rich guy's things, and it took up a whole ship, but he was actually among them.
Okay.
And he gets hungry on the ship because it takes forever. So yeah,
Interesting. I kind of want to see this one. I was not aware that this was an actual Dracula thing. I thought this was just a vampire on a ship story. So.
Yeah, no, it's a very famous part of the original Dracula
All right,
story.
cool. I guess I'd need to read that. So do you rank it brilliant or lazy?
Brilliant for sure.
All right, cool.
Unexpectedly so, honestly.
Awesome. Well, we got 28 seconds to spare, so we'll just move on. Save some time for later. So next up, we have the Meg 2. You saw this, correct?
I did. Did you see the first Meg?
No, I did not.
So the Meg, I should have brought up my books. The Meg is based on like this 1990s horror novel about a megalodon coming up, and I remember reading that when I was a teenager, and it scared the shit out of me. I mean, it was an adult book that was, and I mean the front page said Jaws meets Jurassic Park, and it totally was, and it was a horrifying novel. It was not made for kids, and I loved it. And I was so disappointed. They've been trying to make this movie for like 25 years. And when they finally made The Meg with Jason Statham, they turned it into just jokes and stupidity. And I guess that's a way to take it. And that's, that kind of seems to be something that studios fall back on. If they don't know how to make a serious project come to reality, they just make it a comedy. And I didn't think it worked. The sequel came out. I love the sequel to the book. I didn't think the sequel was going to be anything like the book, but I was bored and I was able to stream it, and it was more of this. I think it's like made with the Chinese studio, so it was more of that partnership. You could tell was pretty clear, which was fine. The graphics were kind of they brought in some other beasts that you don't think about. Some fiction, some fabled, and it was kind of fun, but it was still pretty boring compared to what it could have been.
Okay.
Oh, and Jason Statham, his thighs must be just like he might be Thor in this universe, because he literally these things are like the size of like skyscrapers, and he's able to just hold it back with his leg in one scene. So I mean, he was boss mode for sure. I remember when he used to be cool.
Yeah. These
lazy.
I haven't seen these movies. They give me very much Piranha 3D vibes.
Oh God, Piranha 3D was better than this. I'll tell you.
Oh
that.
really?
I saw that one in theaters because I was bored, and it was better.
I saw Piranha 3D in theaters because I was tricked into going. That's a story for another time. Next up, we have the Jennifer Lawrence comedy No Hard Feelings.
I feel
this
bad
is another one that
the ones I've seen.
This is another one that you saw. So
This one was sold as the raunchy comedy with Jennifer Lawrence, and it's not really that raunchy. It's definitely sold that way. It's about a family who has a son that's about to go into college. He may or may not be autistic, and they're afraid that he's just not going to be able to survive if he doesn't get laid. And so they literally put out a thing saying, "Hey, would you come date our son?" And that's code for come get him to take his V card. And it's so hard for her to get this dude to come over to the dark side. But there are some great moments in this film. I ended up really enjoying it. Again, this was something that I was like, I'm bored. It's new. Let's watch it. And I definitely enjoyed it. One of my favorite scenes in this whole thing. They were having a previous conversation earlier on in the film about the song "Maneater," which is a great song, and it's kind of a fun, upbeat, 80s, 90s type song. And later on in the movie, they're in like a restaurant, and it's got a piano, and the kids always talk about how he can play piano. So she kind of bullies him to go up and play in front of this ritzy restaurant, and he plays this kind of jazzy piano rendition of "Maneater" and sings it, and it's fantastic. And I was like, this is great. And so I ended up, like, I'm not saying it's the best movie, but I went into it thinking this was going to be kind of a poor, half-assed, raunchy comedy, and it ended up being kind of this comedy drama that I really appreciated. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's fun.
We got a minute 10
Soft,
left.
brilliant.
Soft brilliant?
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence took a few years off there. So I'm excited to see her back.
And I've never been like a Jennifer Lawrence hater or anything, but I had no, like, people are like, "Oh, dude, I wonder if she's gonna get like full naked in this film," and I'm like, it's not. Like, you can tell from the trailers that it's not. It's a bait and switch, but I liked the switch, so it was good.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably check this out at some point here in the future. So you said soft brilliant?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's move on to our next topic, which is something that I've seen, finally. Only Murders in the Building. Josh, have you watched any of this show?
It's on my list, but I have not watched any of it. I don't even know what season it's on.
It's on season 3 right now. This season they have brought in Meryl Streep and Paul Rudd, in addition to Selena Gomez, Martin Short, and Steve Martin. This show is my favorite show on television, and before we did this, I just got caught up on this week's episode, and I haven't laughed that hard at this show ever. There was a moment that in the latest episode where they bring in a new actor to play in Martin Short's musical that he's trying to put on Broadway. And there's a lot of inside baseball theater jokes for one of my favorite musicals, The Producers. I realized as you were talking about No Hard Feelings, the dad in that is Matthew Broderick, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick comes into this, and they do a lot of producer jokes. And I just saw a clip of Martin Short in The Producers on Broadway in the early 2000s. So it was like Leo Bloom versus Leo Bloom. And there's a moment in here that I don't want to spoil for when you watch it, but my wife and I both cracked up hysterically. But I think the murder mystery is a great aspect of the show, but what sells it for me is the chemistry between not only Martin Short and Steve Martin, but the chemistry with the two of them and Selena Gomez. She's such a great foil to bounce off of them with a different generation, different take, and they work so well together. And this show has such a great ensemble cast each season. They bring in different people to play along. Nathan Lane's in the first few seasons. It's my favorite show on television, and I highly recommend it.
That's definitely a legendary duo, and so just the idea of them throwing anybody into a mix with those two, like that has to spell confidence in that third person.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that it works.
Selena Gomez is thriving where Chevy Chase failed.
Yeah.
So highly recommend this. I know the poster that I have up here says Disney Plus, but it's on Hulu here in the States. I guess I accidentally pulled the British poster. So, real quick, since we have 25 seconds left, I know this has been a debate on the internet. Martin Short, funny or not?
Oh, totally funny. I love
Okay.
Martin Short. I think he's great. I loved, yeah, I love it when he's acting. Like he does some more serious acting and stuff like the morning show. I love it when he's just self-deprecation, especially anytime Steve Martin's on SNL.
Yeah,
And I think he's great. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Both Only Murders in the Building and Martin Short are brilliant.
All right. Good
All
deal.
right. Moving on to another thing with Matthew Broderick, Painkillers. This is a Netflix series that you watched. You got 3 minutes. Sell me on it.
This it's heavy. It's heavy. We've all heard about the opioid crisis, and it seems like this last year, this year, and into next year, we're just getting waterboarded with opioid crisis related films and documentaries. There's another Chris Evans one that's about to come out. I think it's a fictionalized version of it, but it's the same story.
Yeah.
Painkiller, I didn't know if I would like it because I've seen documentaries on the opioid crisis, and I was like, does it really need to be sensationalized or dramatized? But it really did sell the point. Matthew Broderick does a great job of just playing a rich son of a bitch that you just want to see go down. And the more they succeed, the more upset you get. And again, it's a story I've seen before and I know pretty well, but I still appreciated how they told it. The best, I mean, the best. Oh, and the cast is great. Uzo Aduba is in it. I love her in other things, especially The Outside, or not The Outsider. Was she in The Outsider? Or was that somebody else?
I think that was somebody else.
That was somebody else, but she was in Orange is the New Black, and she's
Yes.
great in Orange is the New Black, and she's great in Painkiller. I really like her her kind of story arc. But in my mind, the best part of this show is Taylor Kitsch's drama. I know people are kind of torn on whether or not he's a good actor. I think he's had some bad breaks, especially with like the Mars movie, John Carter, and Battleship. But I think he is a great actor, and he does the human side of this story of somebody that gets on opioids because they had a really bad injury, and then somebody sells this to him as this is the drug that's going to get you back. And then you just, I mean, and it's more relevant to me because I'm working in the industry right now of addiction recovery, and you just see him go up and fall and go up and fall,
Yeah.
and it's hard to watch, but it makes the show, and it's a very powerful show, and it's hard to watch, but I recommend it.
Okay. I hadn't heard of it until you put it on the list. So do you rank it as brilliant or lazy?
Brilliant. Yeah, I think it's very good, well put together.
We are running low on time, so I'm going
Okay.
to move us on to the next topic, which is Talk to Me, the horror.
Talk
film
to
that-
Me?
Yeah.
A24 horror film. I did not know this until I walked in to see it at the Alamo. You know, they always put the stuff in the beginning of, a little background. This is made by the brothers that did the Rocka Rocka YouTube channel. And if you've ever seen any of their YouTube bits, they used to do these crazy like lightsaber battles in Targets and in home or lightsabers versus Harry Potter fans, and they would just get crazy violent and stupid, and they were always way over the top, but they were great. They made a horror film, and it's kind of like along the same lines as the Jordan Peele horror films, where you just see these great comedians or these people that you don't normally associate with horror coming in to make a solid horror film. So they made this film just about some teenagers. It's a definite allegory for drugs. They come across this hand that's like a mummified hand of somebody that was possessed, and they bring it around to parties, and you hold the hand, you say certain things, and then you're able to talk to the dead. But if you hold that hand too long and you don't turn it off, then you might let that dead person come about a little longer than they're supposed to be. And it's definitely like, it starts out as a party thing, and then things go wrong, and then things go super fucking wrong, and it gets dark I loved it. I did not expect it to be what it was. It was refreshing as hell. It was unsettling as hell, and I can't recommend it more.
Yeah, I A24 is one of those studios where I'm like, okay, this is a horror movie. I need to be in the right
I agree.
mindset for this.
Yeah, but I don't always like their horror films. Sometimes I feel like their horror films are a little bait and switch. This was a horror film. Like,
Okay.
this was a solid. This creeped me out at times. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
I'm intrigued by this one. With spooky season right around the corner, I feel like I'll probably get to this one here by the time Thanksgiving comes around.
I think it
So-
fits. It's heavy though, so be
Yeah.
prepared. It's heavy.
Okay. Very cool. Moving on to our next topic, another one that I
Brilliant.
did not get to go
Brilliant.
see. Brilliant. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem.
Real quick, this was great. One of the things I miss about the '90s is the animation style. I feel like the animation style of a lot of Saturday morning cartoons in the '90s were fantastic, and then early 2000s, 2010 era, for some reason, just animated shows got this really just kind of, in my mind, lazy, simple animation, and some of it grew on me, some of it really didn't. But what you see the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse films coming out with this really cool animated stuff, and it just got breathed new life into that. Same thing happened to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think the voice acting was great. The story was definitely fresh and fun because we've seen a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles iterations over the last couple years. This one, the art was really cool. I mean, I was just sitting in the theater, just like I do with the Across the Spider-Verse films, going, this is some cool artwork, and it fits the characters, and I really enjoyed it. It's a fun movie, and I really went in with low expectations and was pleasantly surprised.
I've only heard great things about this. My co-host on my other show, Ryan, got to see this opening day at like 9:00 in the morning. It was like him and like two other people in the theater. Just looking at the style of this, like I think some studios have gotten the right lessons from Spider-Verse, which is play with the animation a bit. Like you don't have to stick to the same Pixar,
Yeah.
DreamWorks style. Like you can do different things with this, and I think
And it's chaotic, but it's the right amount of chaotic.
yeah, and I think it needs to be chaotic when you have four turtles who are ninjas and also mutants.
Yeah. Also, they're teenagers. They really
Yeah.
nailed the teenager part of it, which I appreciated.
Well, I think part of that's because it's produced by Seth Rogen, and he's a perpetual teenager at heart.
Yeah, but
so,
he gets things wrong sometimes. You see Green Hornet, and that's a prime example. So
Yeah.
I think he nailed this one.
He's had more hits than failures lately, especially with like
Sure.
The Boys and all of that. So I'm really excited to see this. I think I'm excited to see where this franchise goes because I'm sure they're going to do another one because this one seemed to do fairly well.
Hopefully. I know the strikes like really hurt the promotion for this film, so hopefully it goes the line of the Across the Spider-Verse films, whereas the first one maybe didn't do as great in the theaters as they wanted it to, but they still gave it faith to continue, and
Yeah.
I think it could.
All right. Moving on to our next topic is the new season of Futurama on Hulu. Josh, have you seen any of this yet?
Big fan. I've only seen the first episode of the new season.
Yeah, there's not much to say here. If you like Futurama, you're gonna like this show. It's the same show. Like they haven't really missed a beat with it at all. The voices are all the same, even though they almost didn't get Bender back.
I know, it's crazy.
It's the same show. Like they did a great job of addressing the last finale and moving on from
Which
it very
was
quickly.
great. Ended
Yes.
so well.
And it doesn't negate that finale at all. Like that finale still happens, and then okay, hey, we're gonna pick up and do some more because we want to tell streaming jokes now because we're on Hulu.
Yep.
It's the same show. It's fantastic. I need to watch this week's episode, but if you like Futurama, you're gonna like this show. So, yeah, that's all I've got on that. So next we have the HBO documentary series Telemarketers, which I watched having read a little bit about it on the internet. And I watched the first episode just for something to watch. I was like, oh, okay, that was interesting. I wonder where they go in the next episode. Because it tells the story of one of the biggest telemarketing companies in the 90s and early 2000s and what happens to them in the first episode, and by the end of the first episode, they're shut down. So I was like, okay, what's the second episode? And then they go on this journey of showing you how the telemarketing industry actually works, and who the people are who are working in this industry. It's fairly interesting. So if you're interested in a compelling story with some interesting characters, I think this has it. It's brilliant, but there's something there's some bait and switch stuff that they do.
I forgot we had that as an option.
Yeah.
Yes, brilliant, but
yeah, there's some bait and switch stuff between the second and third episode. I was like, oh well, that was just kind of mean. So it might be worth checking out if you're interested in documentaries. I thought it was an interesting watch and very enlightening about telemarketers as a whole.
I want to see it. I saw the trailer. I want to see it. The 90s is filled with just this pre-big internet boom time period of interestingness, like so much crazy stuff, like this kind of stuff, the Pepsi Harrier jet stuff, like just so much fun stuff happened in the 90s. I could watch 90s documentaries all day.
Yeah. The only other thing that I forgot to, as we were talking, I realized I didn't pull a poster for is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Have you been watching that?
I finally started. I went to Wyoming last month, and we flew Delta, and I've never flown Delta in a long time. All right, it's been a long time. But you could watch Strange New Worlds, so I watched the first season that weekend, and I loved it, but I'm not caught up after first season.
All I'll say about the second season is they do a musical episode.
I've heard.
And like season 2, they do one episode that's a serious episode, and they do another one to have fun with. So they do a musical episode. They do the Lower Decks crossover.
I've heard about that too.
It's what I want Star Trek to be. Like, I thought Picard set the bar high, but Strange New Worlds kept it going on that level. So
good. That's what we need. That's what we need. I saw something that said a love letter to classic Star Trek, and I'm like, that's what we need, because I feel like that's what we've been missing, especially on Paramount. And so maybe this and the final season of Picard is like steps in the right direction.
Yeah. Makes me interested to see what happens with the final season of Discovery. But we have just about 2 minutes left. Anything else we want to say before we sign off for the night?
I think it's just interesting that the strike that's continuing on. I don't know about you, but my YouTube algorithm feed has just been flooded with a bunch of trailers for films that kind of, they got long, interesting titles. They look like films that might have gone to streaming or never released in theaters. Some of them look interesting. Some of them look like things that they have on the shelf until they have a dry period. And now there's the dry period. So there's a lot of films coming out that I've never heard of, and I'm excited for maybe a couple of them.
Yeah, there's a few that I knew were on the horizon. Like, I just saw yesterday they released the Aquaman 2 trailer. I'm like, you know what? I'm good.
There's somebody missing from that trailer.
Yeah,
and
there
it's
is.
Very obvious.
Yeah.
It's very obvious.
But on that note, like, Pete Holmes released a new Batman sketch this week where
Did he?
Yeah, it's Batman and Aquaman. So the guy who I'll send it to you then. The guy who usually plays Commissioner Gordon is playing Aquaman. So,
great.
Josh, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on the internet.
Okay. You can also find me on the internet at You Have to Watch This Podcast, where each week me and my other two podcast co-hosts make each other watch movies one of us has never seen. It's like a book club for movies. You can also find Josh and I here on Brilliant But Lazy every other week here on Victims and Villains YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe to Brilliant But Lazy's podcast feed. We got some exciting...
in New York next month.
In New York Comic Con, we'll be there. So without further ado, for Brilliant But Lazy, I'm Alan.
I'm Josh.
And may the Force be with you.
There you go.
And not Nick Fury.